Welcome to Buckets. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by my colleague, NBA futures analyst Brandon Anderson. We are going to break down Celtics Heat Game 4 coming to you on Monday. Everything that we talk about today can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. It's the best way for you to track your picks. Just flat out best way. Get up to the second information, all sorts of cool stuff. You're going to enjoy it. If you're listening to this podcast, you have to download the app. Like, you just have to. It's just, you're missing, your life is not complete unless you download the app. Raheem Palmer is out with us tonight. Raheem is in New York City doing something or other, so he's not available with us today. So Brandon and I are going to break down Heat Celtics Game 4 after, sure, the home team, we all love the Celtics in Game 3, and the Heat just came out and gave them the business. Just flat out gave them the business for a quarter. The Heat have now won two quarters in this entire series. They have tied 3 times. So, and yet they're up 2-1. They're up 2-1 despite Jimmy Butler missing the entire second half. Not a great loss for your Boston Celtics in Game 3, Brandon. I don't think that they're doomed, but after I was like, well, shit, I guess Brandon was just right about everything after Game 2. Having this kind of like outlier weirdo game for it being like, yeah, like the Celtics are better. They're down 2-1. Yeah, is a little bit weird. Yes to all of that. Yeah, not a great game for the Boston Celtics. They, you might say they turned over a win in this one to Miami, because holy cow, Miami had 19 steals in the game. Victor Oladipo doesn't play the first half, then comes on and like has a masterclass defensively in the second half. Jaylen Brown was in the torture chamber with Oladipo. I couldn't even dribble around him. Yeah, I mean, look, we do the whole Heat culture thing. This was a Heat culture win. This was, we want it more than you. We're going to get the loose rebounds. We're going to get the 50-50s. We're going to deflect and poke the ball out and get the steals. Our role players are going to play hard. Bam finally showed up for the series. He basically was MIA for the first 2 games and then had a monster game, 31, 10, and 6, 22 shots, 5 stocks. He was huge. And yeah, if you look at, you talked about the quarters thing, like Boston has been on the whole of the series, Boston has been the better team, but not by a huge margin. And the only margin that matters right now is 2-1. Doesn't matter. Any of the quarters, all your stuff doesn't matter. Boston is down 2-1. Miami has gotten home court back. But better team or playing better or whatever, you've got to win 3 out of 5 now, with the Game 7 looming, with, like, as Raheem would say, everyone on both teams in the hospital. Like, do we even, let's start there. What's your latest? What have you heard on who do we think, as of, we're Sunday dinner time right now, who do we think actually plays or may sit this one out Monday night? Butler's going to play. So Jimmy Butler is a go. Mark Kyle Lowry is a go. Responded well, played well. Looked really good, looked much better than they did in that Sixer series after the much needed time off. So I think that the Heat are basically good to go. I think the Heat are okay. Robert Williams was improving and felt better today on Sunday, but is still questionable for this game. If Robert Williams is part of your cap and part of what you're betting on, you have to wait until you hear that he's in, which may be right before the game. Marcus Smart had a lot of swelling today, which is not surprising.
Yeah.
Like, he played the end of that game basically on adrenaline. So predictably, the ankle swole up today. I would not be right now. I would not expect Marcus Smart to play, is what I will say. Now, this is Sunday afternoon. Monday morning, maybe like, yeah, he responded well to treatment, he's good to go. Marcus Smart's a tough son of a bitch. Like, he's just extremely tough. So it's entirely possible that he plays. If Marcus Smart is part of your cap, then you need to wait to make sure that he's in. Jason Tatum's fine, has stinger. He's okay. He's good to go. Tyler Hero, the Heat. Tyler Hero has what is being called a, quote, leg issue. is how Spoelstra said it. They're listing it as a groin, and he's questionable. I do think probably Hero actually is maybe 50-50, which that seems like a major negative for the Heat, and I'm not sure it is after the first half of game one. I don't think his minutes have been great since then. So what's your reaction to, I will be honest with you, like those are takes off of what's been reported and like my interpretation of things. If you want to know for sure, just wait, just wait to bet. And then you'll know certain things. But that's kind of what I expect. I expect Jimmy to play. Tyler's 50-50. I think Marcus Smart's probably like 35-65, not like to lean towards not going to play. Williams is probably 60-40 gonna play. Yeah. And Jimmy Butler's good to go.
Yeah, I think those reads all make a lot of sense to me. I will be waiting. I'll just tell you right now, my best bet on this game, I've got a few props that I like here that in part, I like them because I will probably like them regardless of what happens with all those variables. But I don't have a side here because Marcus Smart does impact my read. Robert Williams does impact my read. I don't know necessarily. I agree with you. I think Butler and Tatum probably play. I think Lowry probably plays. I think Tyler Hero does matter. He hasn't been good, but he does matter, and they need the offense. And he's one guy that can get some shots up. I don't know that I can feel very comfortable playing a side on the game. I don't know I can feel comfortable playing a future right now. This is a spot where I would have wanted Boston to bet on Boston futures right now, a team I believe in to win the title at a number I like. But I don't trust who's going to play any given night, or even on the guys who start, who finishes the game now. Did Tatum's shoulder hold up? Did Butler play through the knee, or did he disappear at halftime again? Like, I don't trust who's going to be out there for each team. So for right now, I don't feel like I can responsibly play certainly a future when there's so much unknown right now. If anything, I'm trying to think, okay, what props can I play that are independent largely of the injury question marks? And if the injuries suddenly tilt one direction in either way, what would that mean? And could there be some value there? So that's kind of where I've thought about on this game. But I will be a check your app a few hours before the game once we get some news, and I'll be probably playing a little more closely there.
All right. So game 3 opened Celtics -5.5 and then moved to 6. This one opened 6.5 and it's staying 6.5. If Smart and Williams are listed in, will you play Celtics?
No, I think I'm just not gonna. I think
okay. I just want to.
Yeah.
I just want to get a sense of where your confidence is on Boston.
Yes.
Back, like
here's where my confidence is. If you told me that Smart and Time Lord and Tatum are in and start and play, we don't have a way to know, but like that they played the whole game, then I would have wanted to bet Boston -6.5. I would want them in the spot. I would have wanted to bet a Boston title future in the spot, but we don't have any way to know that. Even if they're announced that they're starting, we don't know how healthy they are, or if they're just playing through in a spot where they need them. So yes, if I knew they were healthy, I would love this spot for Boston still, but I can't do it. I can't bet the side.
Tatum's fine. So don't worry about Tatum. Tatum's okay. He has a stinger. He's okay. So okay. Like, Tatum's good to go. A bunch of stuff that's interesting. The Smart injury, I do think actually is probably worth considering into your bet. If Smart, so what's interesting about this is the line, right? The line doesn't necessarily indicate that Smart's not going to play, because I think if Smart was, I think if the books thought that Smart was not going to play, I think this line would be closer to 5.
I agree.
And so that kind of indicates that they think at least he's going to play. And if he's ruled in, though, is it going to move to 7? Like, that's like an interesting question of like, does this move if Smart's ruled in? Because right now, and we're talking this early, but there's a sizable number of bets in our system on it comparatively. 54% of the tickets are on Boston, but 54% of the money is on Miami. Like, it seems, and that would explain why this line hasn't moved at all. Like, to me, it kind of, I think there's an indication of at least there being this idea of maybe Boston is not so much better than Miami the way that we kind of thought that they were. even though Brandon, I'll tell you, I wrote the preview. I still think you're right. Like half court is 102 to 98. That's half court. What is interesting, I'm gonna melt your brain.
Wait, who's the 102? Boston?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm gonna melt your brain here.
Okay.
Miami's scoring better off of rebounds per possession than they are off of turnovers for the entire series.
Wow.
Which is not a
Wow.
testament to Miami's offense. It is a testament to the Celtics defense for getting back, because a lot of, and that's off of after 33 on 19 in game 3. Like, if you want it, like, I am absolutely of the idea of like, yes, the Celtics lost game 3 because of turnovers. 100%. I think I'm struggling because like confirmation bias, because I was on like, I think the Heat are pretty good, and everybody laughed at me after game 2, and I laughed at me. I was like, I'm a moron. I'm an idiot. They're terrible. The Celtics are so much better. The problem I have is when I look at the entire data, it leads to this. You're right. The Celtics are better. The Heat have not had an outlier game yet. Their shot quality data it's almost on the dot. Like, it's within 2 percentage points of effective field goal percentage. Like, Boston's had a wildly positive one and like a moderately negative one. And the Heat have basically shot what expected. They're shooting worse because the Celtics defense is awesome. Like, they're expected to shoot worse because the Celtics defense is awesome. But what's interesting here is like, if Miami gets I'm not betting it. I'll tell you my best bet in a second. But if Miami gets an outlier shooting performance in game 4, that's it. It's 3-1. Like, this literally, and I will also say this because this is, and a lot, Nikias brought this up. Nikias Duncan on Twitter, who you should see. You should absolutely check his work out. Nikias NBA on Twitter. Nikias mentioned this, and like a couple of people mentioned this. This is exactly what happened in that 2020 series. Like, I was saying that before. Again, I thought the Celtics were better then. I think the Celtics were better in 2020. And eventually it was like, well, okay, but the bubble. It's the bubble. Except that they just went into Boston and they did the exact same thing. They should have lost that game. Jimmy Butler was out in the second half. I don't care what your lead was. You are at home in a 1-1 conference finals, and Jimmy Butler sits the second half. Like, for all of the like, well, the Heat, they came all the way back. Yeah. You didn't win a game in which Jimmy Butler didn't finish. That's like, this is beyond like the shooting variance and outliers. This is into like, you are literally losing your chance at a championship.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say this. I said I won't be playing a side because it's just too hard to know with the injuries. Here's the caveat to that. If you're wrong about Jimmy Butler and we find out Jimmy Butler is out, I'm playing Boston now. Whatever the line moves to, I'll play Boston immediately because Jimmy Butler has been that good and that important to them. And I played them the second half too. I played the Boston money line. I lost, but I'd play it again every single time because Butler, look, Bam was awesome. Strus hit big shots late. The Celtics were like, if the game had been an extra couple of minutes, it was just a matter of time. We just ran out of time for them to get there, and the Heat made just enough shots to hold them off, and they did it. That's not taking anything away from it, but Boston would have won that game if they had enough time. They just dug too much of a hole. If you start without a hole, 0-0, but with no Jimmy Butler, I'll take Boston at any price I can get them.
Sure. I'm just telling you that that today, like, I mean, Chris Haynes has reported that Butler's going to play game 4.
Yeah, I know.
And he may give it a go, and it may swell up again. So like, maybe that's like the way
I'll take if he's announced out, I'll take Boston. If he is announced out in the middle of the game, I'll take Boston live. When Butler is out, I want Boston's chances.
One thing on Marcus Smart, because I found this number to be really, really interesting. In this series, okay, when Gabe, because here's I thought Lowry made a big impact in that game.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's become very apparent, the Heat have killed them in the first and third quarters. They had the big first quarter in game 4. They had the monster third quarter in game 1, right?
Game 1, yeah.
Game 1. So they've dominated them in the first, and they haven't lost the game 2 one enough to counter that. Like they are significantly up in the first and third. The reason I would be concerned by that, and Celtics fans should be concerned, is that as a result, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been outscored when they're on the floor in the series. That's a yikes. You are not winning the conference finals if your two best players are outscored when they're on the floor. That's concerning. Like if it was like, okay, you're losing the bench minutes. All right, you cut those guys out. That's not what's happened. The Boston Celtics have won their minutes because of the bench. It has been Grant Williams and whoever else, just like with a mix of starters, killing the Heat bench, Dwayne Dedmon in particular. But here's what's interesting is a lot of this was like Dwayne Dedmon and the bench unit was what was getting like roasted. Victor Oladipo and Dwayne Dedmon are the two that you can actually target. With Lowry, you play fewer minutes of Oladipo. And what they're missing is they do need like a small ball counter. Like if Markieff Morris had not suffered whiplash at the hands of Nikola Jokic, it would be very helpful at this moment in time. And I am not a Markieff Morris guy, but he would just help right now. This is the big stat though that I wanted to bring up. The Heat minutes with Gabe Vincent when Marcus Smart is not on the floor, plus 18.
Wow.
Heat minutes with Gabe Vincent when Marcus Smart is on the court, plus minus is 0. That's a credit to Gabe Vincent for playing well enough to not lose the Smart minutes because he's been a massive positive in the series. Heat minutes when Gabe Vincent's on the bench and Marcus Smart's on the court. So this is for Miami. Miami loses those minutes when Smart's on the court and Gabe Vincent's not by 16 points so far. So this really does tell you kind of like the difference. If Smart is out, all of a sudden the Celtics' big advantage in the series, which has been the bench minutes with Marcus Smart, and it's basically been like Marcus Smart and Grant Williams. That combo has killed the Heat. Now all of a sudden you're missing one of those playmakers and everything gets a little tougher. So that to me is like something that if you're wondering beyond the Marcus Smart is good, how they actually impacts things, this is my big takeaway. Smart hurts their ability to win the second and fourth quarters with the bench units when the Heat starters are not on the floor.
So this is really interesting because I had targeted the same trends that you saw, the first and third quarter thing, the second and fourth quarter thing. I came away with a different conclusion. And it's nothing against Marcus Smart, but it's focused on another name that you said a couple times in your analysis. It's focused on Grant Williams, and it's focused on a name you didn't mention, Daniel Theis. Because to me, Daniel Theis is a big problem for Boston. He's played 37 minutes this series. The Celtics are minus 36 in those 37 minutes. For reference, in the 107 other minutes of the series, the Celtics are plus 44. So they are winning huge when Theis is not on the floor. They're losing a point per minute when he plays. This is why I would have thought Marcus Smart is, Marcus Smart is the more important player, I think, to that team in this matchup, certainly, than Robert Williams. But this is why I need to see, is Williams going to play too? Because Theis is the answer when Williams doesn't play. They're starting him. They started him and then brought Grant Williams off the bench. Williams played 39 minutes. Like, it's very clear that Udoka knows Grant Williams is my guy. It's not Daniel Theis. Well, then stop digging the hole with Daniel Theis, because like, here's where I'm at. If Williams is out again, this is kind of a weirdly reminiscent thing. And this, I'm not saying Daniel Theis is this, but last round against Philadelphia, when Philadelphia's center was out and they kept starting the center that we knew should not be playing, and we started doing the Heat first quarter and Heat race to 10 points and all of those things, I think I'm there. If Williams is out and Daniel Theis starts, I wrote down Heat race to 10 on FanDuel is plus 124. If Theis is starting, I want it. And similarly, Boston in the second quarter is 3-0. Celtics second quarter minus 1.5. Boston is plus 25 in the second quarter. If Theis is starting or if Robert Williams is starting, either way, you get the Grant Williams off the bench and you keep that bench unit intact. Then I like the second quarter spot too. So I saw the same trends that you've seen. For me, if Williams is out, if Robert Williams is out, you have to start Grant Williams. He's the guy that you know is your fifth guy, not Daniel Theis. And I kind of think that they would do that. If they don't make that move and Tice is starting, then we've got some clear trends that I think it's not just Smart. Even if Smart is playing, but Time Lord is out, those trends I think are still there and are worrying enough to me. Am I making too much of the Robert Williams, Daniel Tice on off thing?
No, I think you are. I mean, I think you're making a great point here. And I wonder, should we just be playing Grant Williams overs when they pop, whenever they
Yeah.
both? Like,
I
should we just be
looked, they're not
playing?
up. I was like, all right, well, Grant's going to play all the minutes he can. Grant threes, Grant steals and blocks, but there are no lines yet because the same reason the books don't know if he's how much he'll play.
I don't have enough of a sample on Ime Udoka to know whether or not that's a data point that he's going to respond to. So,
Right.
like, there are coaches that if a guy's a huge negative, somebody in their staff will be like, "Hey, so we've lost by like 30 points when this guy's playing." And I'm just saying that's something you should consider, is that we've lost by 30 points in his 10 minutes or whatever. And there's some coaches that are like, don't bring me that plus minus. I don't want to hear it. So,
Yeah.
like, I don't know where Udoka lands on that. I don't. I know
Yeah.
that the Celtics analytics department is robust and very good, but
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to respond. I do think I will tell you my best bet.
Okay.
So my best bet for this game, I'm doubling back on you. I'm taking your bet from game 3, which I tailed, and I'm going at it again. I'm taking Celtics over 107.5. And the concurrent theme throughout the first 3 games, there's a lot of themes in the series, you would imagine. But one concurrent theme is that the Heat defense has not been able to slow down Boston's offense, which is a credit to you, because that was a big part of like your position, is like the Heat's defense isn't as good and the Celtics defense or offense is really good. The 3-point line is a lot of that. Boston's shooting hasn't been so far above expected mark that I can sit here and think that it's not going to get there. Pace is a little bit of a concern, just because if they cut down the turnovers, you got more passes and it's going to be a little bit more patient. You don't have as many possessions. So it's a little bit of a concern on that front. But I look at it and I go, do I think that Boston's going down 3-1? I do not think Boston's going down 3-1. Okay, do I want to lay the 270 on the money line? No, I do not. All right, do I want to lay the 6.5? Hell no. So this series has been blowouts. So if you're listening to this and you're like, whoever's won has won comfortably, why not just play the spread here? When I watch this again, it's this game. These games have a wide margin that's essentially decided by whatever quarter one team goes nuts in. Like, one quarter, one team goes crazy, and that messes with the spread. I think if we just don't count on that, I do think this winds up being a closer affair. But based at the pace that they're playing at, which is not part of it, is I think these teams are playing a little bit faster. I think entirely because they're like, look, we can't let them get set on defense. Like, we got to push pace because we cannot let them get set. When we get set, we can't score on them. And so we got to push pace.
And that's a Kyle Lowry thing too. Lowry really helped push the pace once he was back.
Yeah. And so I still feel like Boston's going to put up enough. I am going to be on Jason Tatum overs. I'm taking the over 39.5 points, rebounds, assists. Tatum had 10 points in game 3 of the Bucks series. He had a terrible, no good, awful game 3. He bounces back with 30 in the next game. It's basically, and I like his passing versus the way that the Heat are scheming him. They're going to send some doubles at him. I think he'll still score enough. So I'm going to take the over 39.5 points. It's a high number. I get it, but it's points, rebounds, assists. I like the switching. If Williams doesn't play, there's more opportunities for him to grab boards. If Smart doesn't play, there's more opportunities for Tatum to grab boards. Tatum owned his performance. That actually was notable to me from a outside psychology kind of standpoint. I will tell you, like, there's 2 types of players. There's the James Hardens, and this is, I'm not like dragging. No, I'm not dragging on. He's laughing, but I'm not dragging on James. James's whole thing is like, no, I'm just going to play the same way. Like, every game is entirely different. I'm just going to, because there are guys that come in and play that way. Like, there are great players that, honestly, LeBron's like that. LeBron's like, doesn't come. The only time LeBron has broken that was game 6 versus the Celtics in 2012, when it was like, hey, your entire legacy is on the line. Other than that, he comes into pretty much every game with the same approach. I don't think Tatum is like that because I think Tatum's younger. So Tatum is going to be more like he owned it afterwards and said, I wasn't good enough. I have to be better. We have playoff history to believe that he will be. So I think Tatum has a monster game here. I like Tatum over 39.5 PRA.
I can't get there with you on Tatum just because I don't trust Tatum enough. Enough as you and Raheem both have been higher on Tatum than me this season. And I think really his career and in the playoffs, it's too up and down for me. And I don't feel like I have, you may be right. We just had the down. Maybe this is the up. And so that's kind of the angle I think you're looking at is I think this is a star and he's going to bounce back. I don't trust when the bounce back is coming. And I still worry just a little bit about the injury. I know you're saying I probably shouldn't, but it's in the back of my mind that if I don't trust that the guy is going to necessarily be able to play the full minutes that I want, then I definitely don't want a big number. Yeah, and probably cost the team. Like if they were looking great, and then he came back in and it kind of threw things off. He had a couple turnovers. Credit for playing through. Yeah, I'm staying away on it. If I had to play a side or total or number, I'm with you. Boston over 107.5 is what I'd written down. You didn't mention too my thing with that last game. Celtics are 9-0 to that number in playoff wins this postseason. When they get the win, they go over that number. So that was kind of my angle was this is the sneaky way to play a money line type bet at a much, much softer number here. So if I wasn't to play a side, that'd be where I'm at. If you like Miami in this spot, not just to hang, not just to cover, if you genuinely think, whether because of the injuries or because Boston is getting the wrong number, if you think the Heat can win this game, they go up 3-1, they go back home to Miami, where we know they have been fantastic. At DraftKings, Heat in 5 is plus 600. I'm not going to play it because I still like the Celtics here. That's a bad number. That number is too long. I would put that at least 20%. That's an implied 14%. And I don't even like the Heat that much in this spot. So if you like them, you've got to play that number, I think, because if they steal this one too, they have a great chance in game 5. For my best bet for this game, I'm going with the other Boston wing. I'm going back to Jaylen Brown because that's where I started the series at, and he's been awesome. So Jaylen Brown over 2.5 threes. I'm seeing somewhere around minus 150. That's a lot of juice. He's 6 for 6 on that prop against Miami this season. He's gone over it every single game against the Heat. He's averaging 3.7 threes per game. We know the Celtics can get their threes up against the Heat. He's had at least 3 3-pointers against the Heat in 9 of his last 10 games. So I love that one. If Robert Williams is out, so that Boston is probably playing a little bit smaller in that scenario, then I'll play the rebounds again too. That one's been hitting. He's over 6.5 rebounds, is 3 for 3 in the series. He's averaging 7.6 rebounds per game his last 24 playoff games and had 8 or more in 15 of those. And then the big one, again, I started here before the series. I'm coming back to it because I like the spot for it. For the series right now, Jaylen Brown is averaging 29 points and 9 rebounds a game. If Boston wins this series, it's going to have to be, I think, because Jaylen continues to play that well. Because I don't really trust Tatum. He's only averaging 22 points a game. That's a big cushion for Jaylen so far. At DraftKings, plus 800 to be the Eastern Conference Finals MVP.
Wow.
I think that number is too long. He's averaging 29 a game. He just had a 40-point game. And like, if Boston closed that out, Jaylen Brown is the favorite to be this winner right now because he was fantastic in that game. 8-1 is too long. Obviously, you need Boston to win this game. Otherwise, that number gets really long. But I still like Boston, I think. And it comes back to the thing where we kind of went last year, where I was doing a lot of Chris Paul MVPs if we like the Suns thing. I don't think the Celtics can win the series as banged up as they are unless Jaylen continues to play this awesome. So for me, this is my way of betting Boston, is to bet Jaylen Brown to win MVP.
I'm just going to gently.
Okay.
if the Celtics are so banged up, the Heat were without their starting point guard the first 2 games and lost Jimmy Butler in the second half of game 2. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, my only point here is just like, I don't want to hear everybody's got injuries, everybody's dealing with it, everybody's banged up. Like, the Celtics had every reason to be up 2-1 in this series.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I don't say that to make excuses for them, but Boston already was getting injuries last series. That was part of why I was betting Milwaukee last series, because Smart was banged up from game 1. Tatum, seemed like he hurt the wrist somewhere in the middle of the series. Time Lord's been in and out already last series. This was a thing. So it's not excuses, just where they're at right now. But the injuries are the only reason I'm not betting Boston futures. And the one guy on the team that I know is definitely good to go is Jaylen Brown. So that's the guy I'm putting my faith in.
You're really shook by this Tatum injury.
It's the attrition thing. It's just like we saw like, was it like game 4 or so last series? He had the wrist or the arm or something, and it seemed like it was bothering him. Now he's had the shoulder thing. And Smart has had multiple injuries now, and his style of play is always going to trend toward that. Robert Williams, it's just the accumulation of all of this stuff that we've seen in these last 3 pandemic seasons. It's kind of a last man standing thing. And I still like Boston, but we're running out of men. Like, if Robert Williams doesn't play, Boston's a 5-man rotation, because my guy Derek White has not been good in these playoffs.
No.
Peyton Pritchard can only play like 10 or 15 minutes. Tice can't get in there. You run out of bodies at some point. And Miami is too. Like, there's no excuses. You got to just play with who you got. But yeah, this bet can't be playable anyways, because it'll be after the Warriors game tonight in an hour. But I would love, if I trusted health for these teams, I'd love to bet Eastern Conference to win the finals, because this is the spot I was waiting for. But it's just so many injuries that I can't trust either of the East teams right now.
A couple of things I want to break down before we get out of here. If Williams is out and if Smart is out, if both those guys are out, I'll be on Horford over assists again. It's probably going to bump up to 3. There's a 2.5 that's laying heavy juice now. I'm looking for a 3 or a 4. But I think Horford's assist total goes way up there. I think they can still score with what they've got, but it's going to have to be in various particular lineups. So I don't. Your bet is good. I'm probably going to bet the Jaylen Brown 8-1. If you here's a little bit of a, well, let me put it this way: the value is good because of what he's already done. Does that make sense? The reason I would push back on like the idea, like, he can just go ahead and have like normal Jaylen Brown games, and if they win 3 more, what he's done for the series, they'll look at the entire series line and go like, oh, it was really good, because they won't do like the splits of in wins, right? Like, you need a signature game, but he had the signature game too. I will say this: versus Max Strus and Victor Oladipo, right? 2 not terrible defenders, quite honestly. He's shooting 18 of 25 with them contesting.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you're saying this might even out a little bit.
18 of 25. He is 1 of 9 versus Jimmy Butler, mind you. And he is 3 of 8 versus Bam Adebayo, with him contesting, 3 of 8 with PJ Tucker. So like, we see again the bench minutes, right? It's Jaylen in the bench, and that's where he's been cooking.
Yeah, and that was part of my read on Jaylen, and why I liked the value coming in was that it felt like Tatum was going to absorb a lot of the Butler and Tucker defense, and that Jaylen was going to be the guy, like, look, Strus is a nice defender. Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry, like, it's no fun treat having to score against those guys. Give me them over Butler or Tucker every time. Every time. So yeah, by the way, too, I think I said DraftKings. That's at FanDuel 8-1, and I've seen it more like 3-1 and 4-1 at some books. So definitely make sure you get the best number on it.
Always shop around. I'm surprised. I figured that you would be a lot more confident in Boston.
It's the injuries. It's totally the injuries. Okay. I don't trust which guys are going to be out there, and even when the lineups come out, I still feel like I'm going to play soft on this game, because I don't trust right now on Sunday afternoon. I don't trust that the starters are going to necessarily be the finishers in that game. The injuries both directions are to such significant names, and it's there are so many injury variables right now that I just feel like I can't get a good ground to want to put too much into it.
I think Butler is more likely to miss this game than Tatum. I'll say that.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, like I said before, if Butler is by far the best player in the series right now, Butler, to me, I'm treating Butler this way, and it's going to sound crazy. If Butler is out for this game, I would bet Boston so hard and so fast, the same way if I found out last series that Giannis was out.
Yeah.
That's how I'm treating Jimmy Butler right now, because that's how good he's been.
So, well, let me ask you. Okay, let's say that you don't see the notification pop up or you're unavailable.
Okay.
And Butler's out, but the line goes to 8.5.
I'll play it.
Okay, 9.5.
I think I'd play it. Like I just want Boston. I mean, it's not going to go that high, I don't think, but I want Boston.
3-point swing. If we look at game 3, he was expected to play, and it was 6 at close, right? In Boston, game 3, it was 6. Jimmy's got to be worth 3 points of the spread.
Yeah, he is. But I mean, I guess part of this too is there are still these other guys that are going to move the line one direction or another. So we don't really know where the 6.5 is at relative to that.
Right.
So I don't want to commit to a number on Butler just because there are other factors here, and I don't want to like soundbite a number. But if Jimmy Butler is out, I will just hunt for the best spot. And maybe that's not before the game. Maybe Butler is out, but Tice is starting, and I can still like wait a couple minutes and get Boston a better number live or something. Like,
yeah, I mean,
if Butler is out, I will hunt my spot to play Boston.
There's no combination of this is. I mean, I do think this matters. There's no combination of Celtics players that is worth more than Jimmy.
Correct.
Like, unless it's like 4.
Well, unless it's both the Jays or something. Like, okay, well,
that's
then,
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's like,
no
like if Smart and Williams are both out, which is not expected to be the case, but if Smart and Williams are both out and Butler's out, this line still moves towards Boston.
Yes.
And so, but there's probably value there even still, because I think that like they're not going to, because of those Smart and Williams injuries, they'll have, you're right. Because it's like, okay, Butler moves it to 9. Let's say it goes to 6.5, or it's at 6.5. Let's say it's 6.5. It goes to 9.5 off of Butler. Smart's ruled out. All right, let's go 2 points back the other way, and that's 7.5. Williams is out. That gets you back to like 6.5, right? So like, there's probably still, I think there's still value if Butler's out. I'm with you on this. Like if Butler's out, regardless of the number. And
if Butler is out, I think the hero injury becomes more significant too, because we're just out of offensive options at that point. Like I don't want to put a lot of stock into Tyler finding ways to score, but Jimmy has been the offense. I know Bam was great last game, but Jimmy is the offense for that team. That's what the playoff numbers say. Yeah. So it's not him. It's got to be somebody else. It ain't Kyle Lowry right now. Sorry to break it to you. It's not Duncan Robinson. He's playing like 4 minutes. Tyler being out also, if Butler is out, like maybe then you just do a Heat team under and you're just like, well, maybe the Heat grind something out, but I don't know how they get enough points. If they end up missing Butler and Hero, you're in big trouble offensively.
If Williams and Smart play and Butler plays and the Heat win game 4, what are you going to think?
Then I'm going to think I was wrong. Or, well, then I'm going to think that the Heat are more likely to win the series, certainly up 3-1. I guess it depends on what does that win look like. Like,
I don't think you're, see, the thing is, I don't think you were wrong. Like,
well, that's what I say. Like,
I never bet. I didn't bet Heat until after game 1 of this series, because like, ultimately I was like, I didn't think that, like, we argued and I was like, I don't think you're giving the Heat enough credit. But like, I look at the series and I'm still like, no, Boston's been better. Yeah. The Heat has just found ways to win.
Here's what I would be wrong about in that scenario. I felt before this conference final started on both sides, I told you that the Boston Celtics were a tier above everyone else and that they should be the title favorite. If the Celtics lose 2 games at home for whatever number of reasons, for any number of question marks and injuries and whatever else, if they lose both games at home, they are not a tier above everyone else, and they're not clear title favorites. That's the thing that I'd be wrong about. It doesn't mean that they are the better team or not the better team or whatever else. Like, we already know shot variance and everything's will play huge in this series. If we get full strength on both sides and the Heat win this game, which they absolutely can, because they can always hit their shots, then Boston just isn't, they're not good enough. You can't give away games like they have in this series and like they did last series. You can't keep doing that and be a tier above everyone.
A lot of this where I kind of came in, the reason that I had them kind of power rated closer than you is because of that Buck series where I was like, you went 7 with no Chris, with a Bucks team that in retrospect, like I liked him to win the title. I did. I thought Chris would come back at some point in that series. And he didn't. And so like a lot of it, like the Bucks were, I think of this is a lot of it. When we've made jokes about it since, like that Baca trade was just a fucking disaster. Like it was just a disaster. Like they literally, I do think this, the Bucks cost themselves a title by trading Dante DiVincenzo for Serge Ibaka. I'm not kidding. You have Dante DiVincenzo instead of Grayson for a handful of minutes. You probably win that series. You probably win game 4 and you're probably good to go. I still think Boston wins this game. If you want to put them in a parlay, I think there's absolutely value in putting the Celtics money line parlay in. I like that. I think there's value there. I'm not going to bet
parlay?
Do what?
What's the parlay?
Whatever. We'll see what I gotta wait till.
So Celtics money line plus whatever thing you like with it. You're saying.
Yeah. Just I don't want to bet minus 275 because it feels icky to me. But if we do Celtics minus 270, like I've been betting hockey, right? So it's like Celtics minus 275 plus I'll probably take the Blues next game, right? There's probably value there. Yeah. Probably I probably will bet minus 275 plus Blues. So like
if you, so you're pretty confident the Celtics still here. You've heard my confidence on Celtics futures. If you're a listener right now and you're thinking, well, these guys have me pretty sold on the Celtics futures, I'm not super too worried about the injuries as much as Brandon is. And I feel good like Matt does about Boston winning this game. Should you bet Boston futures right now? Because you're not going to get a better number. This is probably it.
Yeah, you should bet. Yeah. If you are not like, I'm a little shook. I have a lot of Celtics futures. I'm a little shook, but like I bet them 10-1. But if you're sold on it, then yeah, I absolutely think there's value here. Like, you can just bet them to win the title. At DraftKings, it's plus 300. You can get Celtics. They'll be dogs in the next round to the Warriors based off of the preliminary numbers, which is interesting. You can bet Warriors to beat the Celtics right now at plus 290. So you're better off. Like you can bet either one you want. Just take the Celtics to win the title, and then you can bet the Warriors on the spread line and probably get a pretty good number.
Yeah, Celtics, by the way, plus 330 at FanDuel, at Bet Rivers, and at Caesars using our handy dandy odds comparison tool at Action Network. Make sure you use that too. Very helpful.
Plus 330. All right, let's get wrap it up for buckets. We'll be back tomorrow as we preview Game 4 between the Golden State Warriors and the Dallas Mavericks to get a sense of where they're at in the series. Make sure to download the Action Network app. Follow Brandon in the app. You can tail him as I did in Game 3, and we'll continue to do so going forward. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again next time. Let's get buckets.